You're listening to The Overwhelmed Brain. If anxiety is sneaking up on you at the least convenient moment, visit quietbegins.com and check out the safe empowerment system for social anxiety. You shouldn't have to suffer when there's a path to freedom and ease. Life presents the toughest challenges. Every day you are faced with decisions that test your ability to express who you really want to be in this world. We're told to keep saying affirmations and keep thinking positively, but what do you do when that stuff doesn't work? Welcome to The Overwhelmed Brain, where you'll learn to make decisions that are right for you so that you can create the life you want now. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Paul Coliani. I am here to help you increase your emotional intelligence so that you can avoid dysfunction, handle toxic situations with grace and ease, and show up as your authentic self. Everything I talk about on the show is my personal opinion and is meant for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult a medical or psychological professional before making any changes that could affect your physical or mental health. All right, I'm going to go right into our subject today, which is mostly about jealousy. Might branch off into something else, but jealousy is, I don't know, it's one of those things that you kind of learn at a young age. I don't want you to have what I have, or where I go with jealousy, which is I own that, and I don't want you to have that. I don't want you to even look at it. Because that's kind of what it feels like when we're jealous. It's almost like we own that thing. Or let's be clear and just talk about jealousy when it comes to people. I own that person. I don't want you to have that person. I don't want you to look at that person. I don't want you to think about that person in any other way except business or friendship or something. And we carry around this feeling, and I'm just using ownership as the way I looked at it. We carry around this feeling of ownership of someone else, that they shouldn't do what we don't want them to do. And I want you to think about this for a little bit, because if you've ever experienced jealousy or you're experiencing it now, it is that feeling that we don't want someone else to do something because they belong to us. Now, there's a difference between that person belongs to me because we're in a relationship, and even the word belongs implies ownership, and saying this person, I own them. We don't go around saying I own them, unless you're a real narcissist. We don't go around saying those things. But we might say we belong together, or we're a couple, or, she's with me, he's with me. And we don't want our partner or someone we love to seek the company, the companionship, or even visually inspect someone else. Typically, a lot of us don't. A lot of us don't want our partners to look at someone else and think impure thoughts. And we have these thoughts in ourselves when we get jealous. These are these thoughts, these insecure feelings inside of us that maybe they're going to be with someone else. They're going to want someone else. They're thinking about that other person, so maybe they're thinking of leaving me. And then we carry around these insecure feelings inside of ourselves, these feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem, low self-confidence. And we bring them into the relationship, and then we start to disintegrate the relationship because our feelings come up about something our partner is doing. And our feelings can come in the form of some sort of upset or emotional trigger. You are talking to who? You got an email from who? I saw you looking at that person, and I have feelings about it. We have these feelings that come up, and we don't like these feelings because it means that something is going to happen to us. This is where our thoughts go. You're looking at that person, that means something is going to happen to me. Or really, probably most of the time what it is that it means that you must like them or find them more appealing than me. And because you're looking at that person, then I'm not good enough. Feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem. We carry these things around with us, and then it turns into jealousy, and it turns into other things too. It turns into possessiveness and obsessiveness and looking for people to fill the void that is inside of us, because we haven't gotten to that point yet where we can do it ourselves. So this is where jealousy can stem from, is this low self-esteem, this low self-worth, things that we didn't get in childhood. We wanted that extra hug, or any hug at all. We wanted to know that our parents loved us by telling us, by showing us, by touching us, by complimenting us, by filling our head with amazing, wonderful, you're so beautiful, you're so intelligent comments, and we didn't get them. And if we didn't get enough of that, or any of that, it turns into what we carry around with us as something that's absent, something that's missing. And then we seek what's missing in our adult relationships. I think most people listening to this probably know this. And if you don't, then I'm introducing you to this, because this is how we attract dysfunction into our relationships. This is how we attract dysfunction into our lives, is that we seek what we didn't get enough of. I mean, this is one way, in our childhood from our adult relationships. And then when we meet someone that fulfills all these needs and all these wants and whatever's absent in us, we feel so connected and loved by this person that this is it. This is who we want to spend the rest of our lives with. And they better not do anything that makes us feel any different than we feel right now. Because if they do, if they show any type of autonomous thought that doesn't include me in their thought process, then what is being fulfilled will not be fulfilled anymore. In other words, if they find someone else more attractive, or any type of attraction, they find someone else attractive in general, then as someone who didn't get all their needs met as a kid, I'm going to see that as a threat to my identity, to my importance, to my significance in this person's life, in my own life. I'm going to see it as a threat. And then I'm going to have an emotional trigger about it. Something's going to come up. I'm going to get concerned, jealous, fearful, definitely insecure. Something's happening inside of me because my partner is doing something that doesn't involve us. That it only involves what they're thinking and what they're spending their time on. And when that happens, and we have any sort of feeling like that, like, oh no, something's being taken away from me, or something else or someone else is more important than me, we go right back to our foundation of something's missing inside of us. Something is missing inside of me. I need that fulfilled by you. You then complete me. We know that phrase. I've said it many times, but not in the way that usually hear it in movies. But if you're not in my life, I am incomplete and I am not whole and I am not happy. And so I seek you to make me happy. This is how relationships, at least in my life, have worked for the past 30 years. I have always sought someone to make me happy. And to do this over and over again, it has destroyed my relationships. That's a hard word, but my relationships have suffered and ended because I was not finding this other person satisfying me in the way that fulfilled everything I needed. Now, this is different than, hey, our values don't line up, so really we're going in two different directions. We're not heading toward the same sunset. It's just not working out. It's different than that. It's different because my thoughts were always, I am losing control of how I want you to be. And if I lose control of how I want you to be, then I cannot get my needs met in the exact way I need them met. And this is kind of one of those gray areas, because that's why we date and marry and are with other people. We have needs that they can meet, and when they meet those needs, we're happier. Where we get bamboozled is when we're not happy being single, being alone, and then we find someone that makes us happy. That's when we become I hate to say it, an energy drain on someone else. We start draining their energy because now they are our source of energy. They are our source of happiness. You are going to be my source of me feeling like I'm worthy, like I'm significant. You're going to be the source of my confidence in myself. You're going to be the source of so many things that I don't already have in me, that our relationship is dependent on you showing up in a certain way. So you can see I'm not really talking about jealousy right now, but it's all related. It's all associated. Because when you are able to fulfill those things in you, jealousy doesn't really play a role, because A, you're not dependent on them, which doesn't make you cause an energy drain on them to get needs met. And B, if you're this way, you are probably with someone else that is also this way. And if not, that's a good topic for conversation. But if you're with someone who does work on themselves, is into self-improvement, self-help, or therapy or coaching or whatever, and they're just doing what they can to improve themselves, or have worked on themselves quite a bit, you're going to notice a big difference in how they show up in the world. You're going to notice how they show up as an individual able to take care of themselves and want you in their life. And the difference between that and someone who, yes, may be able to take care of themselves, but is missing a lot of the ingredients of what makes them fulfilled without someone else in their life, can introduce an energy drain into the relationship. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that has low self-worth, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, I'm not saying that everyone that goes through this, because a lot of us experience this, is looking for something from the other person. Some people have this in them, and they aren't seeking it from someone else. They know they have it in them. They know they need to work on it, and they don't expect their partner to be that supply for them. So I'm not pointing at everyone that has these low levels in them and saying that all of these people are seeking it from someone else. But when we do, when we have these low levels inside of us and we seek a source, we seek someone else to be our source, that's when we have to be really careful about what we're doing in the relationship and how we are becoming, and I hate to call it this, it's a drain to the other person. I hate to call it this because a relationship can run perfectly fine with this formula. With someone with low self-esteem, the other person raises their self-esteem and raises their self-worth. The other person is that supply, yet it still works out fine. If it's not a problem, it's not a problem. It becomes a problem when someone has feelings about it, when someone is feeling negative about something that's going on. And what I mean by that, and in this episode in particular, the idea of jealousy and feeling like your partner is doing something that makes you feel less important, that makes you feel not as attractive, not as intelligent, not as appealing than someone else. I mean, even opening a magazine and seeing someone that looks better than you and has more money than you, and whatever it is that you might look at and go, wow, that person is better than me in some way. If you have that feeling, and then your partner sees that person and goes, wow, look at that. And then you have these feelings inside of you of insecurity, lack of confidence, lack of worth, or whatever it is. Having those come up in you, there's a couple ways to handle it. There's the way of, hey, don't look at that person and say those things. You should be looking at me. You should be thinking about me only. There's that way where you want to control what your partner thinks and does and feels. Or there's the other way of, whoa, I'm having these feelings come up inside of me. What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? This is where self-help comes into play, where you introspect and you think about where this is coming from. And you consider what you feel so threatened by or fearful about. And when you have these thoughts come up, you can explore those and try to understand yourself. And in a good, healthy relationship with good communication, you can express to your partner, wow, when you looked at that person, I felt a little jealous inside. I'd like to explore this. And again, if you have a healthy partner who wants to communicate about these things and help you improve and help him or herself improve, they're going to say, oh, you did? Let's talk about this. This can be something that we can work through. It doesn't become about, oh, you're looking at that person, you're bad. It doesn't become something like your partner is doing something wrong. It becomes something that, hey, I'm having these feelings inside, and I think I need to explore those so that they don't amplify and get exaggerated in other times when we're out and about and you just happen to spot someone. You just happen to be staring at someone and I notice it. And instead of feeling so insecure that your partner is looking at someone else for whatever reason, you might jokingly say, hey, your eyes are going to pop out of your head. You might want to keep yourself under control. Not that it would necessarily go that way. I'm just saying the idea is for you to get into a more comfortable place inside yourself so that you don't automatically jump into insecurity, lack of confidence, lack of worth, and especially a lack of thinking that you're not good enough. I mean, that's like one of the worst feelings in the world. Feeling that you're not good enough. I mean, it's not the worst feeling, but it feels pretty bad. I'm not good enough. It's a terrible inner dialogue that so many people have. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not skinny enough. It's just a destructive self-talk that can really put us in a different state of mind. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. I've got an email to read, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it, and then I'm going to go through a few of my bullet points on jealousy in general. And I really want to be able to address this in a way that helps you heal from any type of jealousy that comes up in you. And if you're not a jealous person, I'm sure you'll get something from this episode because there's a lot of little points that I'm going to make along the way that can help with any type of relationship that you're in. Particularly the romantic in this episode, but I think it's worth listening to and I think you'll get something from it. We'll be right back after this. Talk about low self-worth and low self-esteem. That can really give you anxiety. It can really give you those thoughts of not feeling good enough, and all of these thoughts that you can have, this inner dialogue that comes up, can start to make you feel anxious because you think things aren't going to work out in your life. Or you think that you're never good enough, and every relationship you get into is a failure or going to fail, or every job that you take is not going to work out because you just think you're not good enough. And there's an expert speaker that joined me in the Safe Empowerment System for Social Anxiety over at quietbegins.com that talks about increasing your self-confidence and increasing your self-worth. Her name is Dr. Bernie Sewell, and I think she really hit it home when talking about how we get anxious and why we get anxious, because if you have any sense of low self-worth or low self-esteem, valuing yourself any lower than you really are, the high worth, high value person that you really are, then I'm going to just say, of course, you're going to be anxious. Of course, you're going to have negative feelings about yourself and situations. Of course, you're going to be insecure. And of course, you're probably going to have anxiety. And having anxiety is no fun. You want to get out of it. You want to diminish it or dissolve it completely. That's why I created the SAFE system for social anxiety. It's a path out of anxiety using audio to help train and repattern your brain so that you not only feel better about yourself and increase your self-worth and increase your self-confidence and self-esteem, but also overcome anxiety. I mean, the combination of all those thoughts that plague your mind, and you just want to get out of situations that make you anxious or thought processes that make you anxious. This is the system that may be the solution that you're looking for. In fact, in the system, we have what's known as the emergency pods, which are these 4 to 7 minute audios that you play while you're in the moment, while your anxiety is starting, to help walk you through and out of an anxious moment. And there are many, many different approaches from several of the speakers, including myself, that the emergency pods cover. And one of them is self-worth and self-esteem, and there will be more emergency pods coming out as well for anyone who buys the system. As we get feedback on what emergency pods people are looking for, you're going to have those available to you for free. But the idea is to heal from this anxiety in a way where you heal what's underneath it. what is causing it. And it's not that you have to discover the origin of it. It's not that at all. Sometimes it's just a matter of reverse engineering it, where how does it show up today, and how can we engineer or repattern our brain so that it doesn't have the same reaction, so that we're not anxious. Anyway, if you're experiencing anxiety, or especially social anxiety, where you're out and about and you get anxiety around other people, the Safe Empowerment System for social anxiety may just be exactly what you need to diminish or dissolve your anxiety. So I want you to check it out. Go to quietbegins.com and see if this program is right for you. Welcome back. I'm going to read you an email from Jennifer, and that's not her real name. Jennifer says, I absolutely love your podcast. They're providing me with so much valuable information. Thank you so much. I just finished listening to an episode about acceptance, and I can't accept that my husband is looking on social media at other women. It's destroying me. I feel lost and alone. I don't understand why he can't stop looking and doesn't look at me like that, and why, instead of spending time with our kids or myself, he needs other half-naked women. I need help. I'm breaking down daily and feel so inadequate in myself. Please help me. I can't accept it, and I don't want to leave him, but it's killing me. Please help me. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. And yes, I think you're experiencing what many, many other people experience in the world. So I get it. I get your fears. I get your pain. I used to experience this when I was in my teens and 20s. I'm not saying it only affects teens and 20s. It affects people of all ages. But I remember experiencing this, so I know what you went through. And let me just say this before I say anything else. When I experienced jealousy, the more I wanted my partner to stop looking at someone, stop thinking about someone, the more I drove them away. In fact, the more I expressed how upset I was, the more I could tell they didn't want to share anything with me. That's going to be one of the bullet points I share in a minute, but I wanted to say that because this is how jealousy can break down a relationship. It's that someone is doing something that the other person doesn't like, or in your case, Jennifer, doesn't accept. And because they don't accept it, and because it really hurting them inside, they want to share this hurt with their partner and hope that their partner just stops the behavior so that life will be great again. But what it ends up doing is causing the partner to be more private, more secret, more distant, and it eventually dissolves the relationship. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but if the relationship doesn't dissolve, it stays around in a pretty fragile state. And in this fragile state, you are losing so much. So I understand that you want this to stop. Whether it's his behavior, your behavior, both, one way or another, it has to stop. You're right. Something has to give. Something has to change. And you said the magic words, I feel so inadequate in myself, which is interesting. And I want to comment on that really quick. Yes, I talked about self-worth and self-esteem and confidence in yourself and all of these things that we want to be fulfilled in us. And we often find it in another person to fulfill that when we can't do it ourselves. But let me just ask you, if before you met your husband, was he doing any of these things? Maybe before you knew him, did you ever talk about him doing these things? Did he ever look at other women? Did he ever think about other women? Did he ever fantasize about other women? Was he doing any of these things before you met? I'm going to assume the answer is yes. That is what he did before. He still wanted to be with you in a relationship. There's still something in him that compelled him, that over the entire selection that he could have had, he chose you. Now, I don't know your scenario. I don't know how this unfolded for you, your relationship. But this is typically what happens, is that someone will be who they are. And we may or may not like their behavior before we got together. But when they bring that behavior into what is our relationship today, suddenly we don't like it. Now, I'm not pushing that on you. I'm not saying, you're to blame here. I'm not saying that you should have accepted him for who he was. That's not it at all. It sounded like it when I came out of my mouth, but that's not it at all. What I'm trying to say is that of the plethora of women that he may have had access to, he chose you. So this is just something to plant a seed in your mind here, that even though he still has his choice of whatever, all these women, I mean, if this is how you're looking at it, he's still with you. So just kind of let that land. Like, wow, no matter, I mean, this is how I look at my relationships now. I mean, hopefully this is my last relationship, but when my girlfriend looks at someone else or calls someone else hot or attractive or sexy in any way, I have to remember that she chose me and she continues to choose me, even though there are, quote, better options. Now, can I look at other people as better options? How does that make me feel? Does that make me feel less? Does it lower my self-worth? Does it lower my self-esteem? It doesn't. And the reason is, A, because I've worked on my self-worth and self-esteem for quite a number of years now. It does take work. And B, I have to remember how I look at me and how I compare myself to others isn't how she looks at me and how she compares me to others. If she's even comparing. I mean, that's another place our brain goes to, is that our partner must be comparing us to someone else. And because they're looking at someone else, it's a direct reflection on us. And when our brain goes there, we automatically discount ourselves. Why do we do that? Why do we discount who we are because someone else is grabbing the attention of our partner? It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. What their interests, they're being activated by someone else for some reason. I know that doesn't feel good. I know that is not the healing words that you want to hear when you're jealous. But I want you to plant another seed in your mind, and that is the concept of nature. Let's look at heterosexual men looking at other women, for example. I mean, this can apply to homosexual men as well, because many guys are visually stimulated. That's our wiring. In fact, it's how we're all wired, men and women. But men do seem to be more motivated and stimulated visually overall than women. But this is nature, not necessarily a form of self-control by the use of our brains. Meaning, is it something we can control? If you see an attractive person and you feel activated inside and you look at that attractive person, is that something you can control? I know some people are going, of course. Of course you can. You're supposed to be able to control that. I'm not talking about behavior. I'm not talking about what you say or what you do after the attraction. I'm talking about the initial attraction that you might have looking at someone. Their hair, their eyes, their body, their legs, their whatever. When you have this engagement inside of you, is that controllable? I could talk about how repressing and trying to control that, like let's talk about a religious viewpoint here, trying to control that because you're clergy, because you're in some position that you are abstaining, might lead to more destructive thought patterns. I'm not saying this with everyone. I'm saying this can happen. What you repress wants to express. And if you repress something completely natural, completely inherent, ingrained in you, and it's not expressed in any way and you try to stuff it down, it finds other ways to come out, and they're not always healthy. People can do it. I'm sure there are people out there that have meditated for years and years and have learned to control like a Jedi. Have learned to control their thoughts, their feelings. They don't get activated. I haven't found too many of those people. And in fact, I don't know if I know anyone like that. Yes, there are people that walk around stoically and think they have control, but I do wonder, inside their minds, do they get activated? My guess is yes, because it's natural. That doesn't mean we can't control our behavior. But bringing the focus back to men, for example, it's very difficult to find a man that doesn't become attracted to another person through a visual sighting, to a visual stimulation, something about that turns him on. In fact, nature seems to be pre-wired this way. I'm going to give you an example. The male peafowl. It's known by what we all know to be a peacock. The peacock tries to attract a mate using his feathers. He spreads them out. He's proud, and he's hoping a peahen, the female peafowl, will be attracted to his spread, his amazing display. The peahen looks for the number of eye spots, the size, the colors, and probably many other things that we may not even know yet. They look at what the male has to offer. It's in their wiring. It's not something they think about. It just happens. Now let's imagine that the peahen started developing more intelligence, and they decided that some peacocks, even though they look good, weren't necessarily a good fit for them because perhaps those peacocks are a little cocky. The peahen is then going to talk to her girlfriends and talk about if he's a great catch or not. The peahen may come to the conclusion, heck no, I'm not going out with him. He's all about himself. This is where the mind starts to come in and play with our natural inclinations, our primal instincts. This is what the mind does. This is what our brains do. We become more intelligent, and along with that comes thinking and overthinking and overthinking until we get to a point where we're driving ourselves crazy and we have these emotional triggers and we're wondering, is he looking at her? Is she looking at him? Is he looking at him? Then we complain to our mate, or we bring up a challenge and we want to talk to them and say, look, this is a problem. We need to talk about it. And this is what has happened to us after we started developing intelligence. I'm making some guesses here. I'm talking about how we evolved in our brains and how, having a single mate might have been the preference over the millennia for so many human beings. And this is how we've decided to create relationships and form bonds and things like that. But still, it's inside of us. There's a natural inclination to be attracted to other people. Now, a funny thing about the peacocks is that zoologists have discovered that bigger feathers is sometimes more attractive to the peahens, but if they're too big, the peahens will not be attracted to them. This is nature. This is us. So you might understand that metaphor a little bit when it comes to men and women, but it also makes us realize that that's also nature. Our attraction has to do with certain elements of the visual. If you can see, if you're blind or someone that's blind, it's going to be different for them. Might be smell, might be sound. But whatever it is that attracts us, it is activating us inside. So this part of the whole process of being activated, I would say, is almost uncontrollable. Again, unless you're a Zen Buddhist monk that's been meditating for years and years and years, maybe you can do this. Like I said, I've not found anyone that has reached that level. I don't know. But maybe it's possible. But it's still a primal instinct that comes up. So if you can get to this space that you can accept that that is primal, that is our instinct, that gets you one step closer to some sort of acceptance that that's who we are. Again, this doesn't excuse behavior. Behavior is a different thing. Behavior is when you act upon what you're thinking, or you just act without thinking. But the point is, behavior then runs into the values of the relationship. Are you being honest or dishonest? Are you being cold and insensitive, or are you empathetic? Are you sympathetic? On and on and on. Behavior is what is maybe where Jennifer is and where a lot of other people are, is what they want to stop. We might be able to say, hey, look, I know my partner looks at other people. That's no big deal. But why is it driving me so crazy? And why won't he stop? There's all kinds of other questions that can link to that, be associated with that. So I just want you to understand that this first part of it, the first component, is nature. It's us. We are a part of nature. When my girlfriend says, that guy is hot, which is rare because she's picky, even though I feel a little bit inadequate, I come right back to my understanding that if I'm upset at her for that thought, then I'm upset with her very nature, what makes up who she is, or what attracted her to me in the first place, in fact. My upset toward her would be like telling her how upset I am that she likes to breathe or drink water. If she finds someone else attractive, that is nature activating in her. Just like the desire to eat or drink or breathe. It doesn't mean I want to hear it. It doesn't mean I want to hear that so-and-so is hot or not, but I choose not to say anything about it, at least in a negative tone, when it happens, because I don't want to create a relationship where she becomes fearful of sharing things with me. And this is what I was saying earlier, is that you can create a rift in your relationship if you start bringing up things that someone shares with you, or you notice their behavior and you're upset about it, and especially if you want them to stop a behavior. That doesn't mean you shouldn't share. That means that you can share and say, I have some feelings about this. Let's talk about it. And hopefully they are sensitive and empathetic and don't want to upset you. So they'll say, oh, I didn't realize that upset you, so I'll stop doing it. Because I care about you, because I love you, and I don't want you to feel hurt or inadequate or insecure in any way. That doesn't mean they have to stop. It just means hopefully they will see your side and sense that you're hurting in some way or feeling something in some way, and they'll work with you. They'll find a way to make things better. This is a little tricky area because you don't want your partner necessarily to want to change solely because of something you want. You actually want them to want to change because of what you're experiencing. And that's why it's important to have a partner that feels empathy, that says, oh, I didn't know that was hurting you. Wow, I'll stop doing that. Or at least let's talk about this because I don't think it's a problem and you think it's a problem. So let's have a discussion on it. That's what I mean by healthy communication in a relationship, is that if you can have a discussion on it and bring it to light and at least talk about it, then you can walk away knowing you were heard and things were talked about, and maybe you have similar values, maybe you don't. Maybe you have similar perception of what a relationship is like, or maybe you don't. And it's a good thing to find out. It's also a good thing to find out if they care or not if you're hurt. Jennifer, if your husband is doing behavior and he doesn't care if you're hurt or not, this has nothing to do with looking at other women. This has more to do with his insensitivity toward you. And if he is insensitive toward you and doesn't care that you're hurting, that's another problem. That has nothing to do with him looking at women or being activated or being turned on. And there's a deeper issue there. Then the question you want to come up with is, why don't you care that I hurt? Why don't you care that I feel pain? Why don't you care that this really bothers me? And if he says, you need to grow up, or I'm not doing anything, I'm just looking, if he has that kind of flippant attitude, again, you got to have a conversation about this. You got to say, wow, I want somebody who actually cares about me. I want someone who actually will listen to me. Maybe I do need to grow up. Maybe I do need to accept this as part of who you are. But why do you have to be so insensitive toward me? Why doesn't it bother you that I'm bothered? Let's talk about that, and then you'll get into some deeper stuff. When we come back, I'm going to give you a few steps to take to heal from jealousy and any other thoughts that you have around this. It's an important topic, and I think you'll find some benefit from this. I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I'm going to give you the steps to take to heal from your jealousy, if you have any jealousy or any feelings like it. Some of these may not apply to you, but I want you to use them as philosophical guidelines so that when you get into any type of jealous state, you reflect back on yourself and you go through the process of maybe replaying these philosophies so that you know what to focus on instead of just their behavior. Because that's what we do, right? We're jealous and we focus on their behavior. And we just want their behavior to stop. But wouldn't it be great to understand why we react to their behavior? That's where I go. I think this is what separates a lot of people that try to improve themselves and the people that really want to improve themselves, really want to grow and learn and evolve. They focus on themselves and how they respond to things. Then there are those that just want other people to change so that they'll feel better. There's a big gap between the people who work on themselves and focus on themselves and focus on other people so that they'll be happy. That gap separates the speed of self-growth. Either way, you're going to grow because you're going to, as long as you're being inquisitive and wanting to get through this. Just like Jennifer, she's like, I need help. She said it. I need help. I want to get through this. And what's the solution? So this is just one of those things where if you're focused on someone else for the solution, then you don't really find any solace inside yourself. Build a solid, emotional, stable foundation inside of you so that no matter who's in your life, you have something to fall back on. No matter how much you fall and fail, you come right back to that foundation and you can get right back up again because you have it in you. That's the most important part. Let's get it in us. Let's not rely on other people to figure out what we need to do for ourselves to change so that we are feeling better about ourselves. Let's focus on us and how we respond, how we react, why we get triggered, so that we bring a new version of us into the world, a new and improved version of us, if we want to look at it that way, into the world so that we can face almost any challenge, so that we can build better relationships. When you have a better relationship with yourself, you have a better relationship with others. The old saying is true. Let's try to do that more and more. So let me get to these steps. Step one when it comes to jealousy is to remember, this is going to sound a little strange, remember that you don't own the person. The reason I say that is because we want them to do behavior that we want them to do. This rides on the cusp of emotional abuse, trying to control someone else, trying to control someone else's behavior so that we'll be happy. We don't own that person. They are still an individual. They are still going to make decisions. They're going to go to the fridge and pick out the food they want to eat. They're going to open a magazine or a web browser and look at the content that they want to look at. They're going to turn on the TV and watch what they want to watch. They're going to open their podcast player and play the podcast they want. They have their own individual choices, likes, values, beliefs, perceptions, all kinds of things that they are still an individual. And they want to keep that individuality and hopefully still want to be with you. This is a tough part. Some people don't get this. Some people don't want this. I get it. But this is what we have to look at, is that they are still an individual. That way, when, for example, my girlfriend wants to listen to music that I don't like, I'm not going to automatically say, change it. I might say it after a half an hour, but I will honor that because that is her path. That is her individuality. That is something she enjoys. I am honoring her decisions. I am honoring her choices. I know this doesn't work necessarily with your partner doing something that feels very betraying. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking in general. Remember that you don't own them, you don't control them, and that you are there to support who they are. And you may not like who they are. That's a different topic altogether, but this is in general how to build a healthier relationship and heal from any jealousy or any negative thoughts that you have about their behavior. So that's number one. Number two is something I've already said. Instead of worrying and trying to stop someone from doing what they're doing, always work on improving yourself. Not that you have to impress them, but to see if they are even impressed by you anymore. That's a little addendum I want to put on there. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that your partner is looking at other people and you spend all your focus and time upset at them for doing that. Instead of focusing on yourself, wondering how you can improve yourself, not necessarily for them, but for yourself, continuing to work on yourself intellectually, spiritually, physically, even monetarily, just doing things for yourself to build a better foundation of you. Are you doing that? Or are you focused on everything that they're doing to make you upset? Because the addendum I added, not that you have to impress them. When you work on yourself, it's not that you're trying to impress them, but you want to see if they're even impressed by you anymore. That sounds a little rocky, I know, but let's just say that you did a few months of improving yourself and you are focused on yourself and they notice that you're not focused on them anymore. And they notice maybe you're dressed a little differently. Maybe your hair's a little different. Maybe your body's shifting and changing in good ways that you feel good about. And they're just noticing these things. And suddenly they have different desires. Suddenly their desire to look at other people or focus on other things in their life shifts over to you. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm not saying that now you got to go out there and work on yourself so that they'll look at you again. I'm saying you do this for you, and as a side effect, You find out if they notice you doing these things for yourself. If they don't, then maybe they really are shifting their focus off of you and shifting their focus off the relationship and not making decisions that are more meaningful or right for them. Maybe they don't want the relationship. I hate to say this, but maybe they're so far out of connection and bonding with you that they don't even notice when you improve or do anything for yourself that makes you healthier and happier. If they don't notice, that is something to bring up. That is something to talk about, saying, look, I don't know why you're looking at these other women or these other men, but I want to know what is missing in our relationship. You tell me. If you are looking at all these other people, you tell me what is missing in our relationship. It's not that I'm going to automatically be that person, but I'd like to know, am I wasting time in this relationship? I mean, these are serious and hard conversations to have, yes. But you can either go every day feeling the same way. If you don't enjoy your life, if you don't enjoy your relationship, then you can either continue that, or you can finally figure out what your next step is, and what their next step is, and what their intentions are. If you want to make this relationship great, you have to have these hard conversations. You have to have these challenging talks that will get to the bottom of things. You need to know where they are. That's number 2. Number 3 is ask yourself if you really trust this person. This is a great question for yourself, and you have to come up with an answer. Either you do trust them or you don't, or you trust them mostly, but, I mean, if you trust someone 100%, then even if they were looking at other people, trust will win. You know, they won't cheat or reach out to someone else or whatever you're thinking. Trust wins. So if you don't have trust in someone, you need to find out why. When did that start? When did you start not trusting this person? And if you don't have trust and that isn't resolved, it doesn't matter what they do. They could stop looking, but your trust will still be low and you won't be able to get into a space of love and connection at the depth that you want. Lack of trust can absolutely lead to jealousy. So the origin of that lack of trust might need to be healed, might need to be resolved in you. That's something you want to visit if that's the case. Number 4 is, have you ever in your life, while you were dating or married or whatever, wanted sex with someone else? Ever? Or just fantasized? Did you wonder what it would be like? This is sort of, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. And you might say, yeah, but that was only once, and he looks at women all the time. Then it comes right back to that question, what are you missing in this relationship? And to you, Jennifer, find out what he's missing. What is missing that if he had it would stop him from doing what you don't like? What is missing? And if his answer is, I don't have enough sex, let's just say that's the answer. It's not just about the act. It's about the whole experience. Listen to my episode called Sex Starts Before the Bedroom. The act can help, of course, and it is part of it, but it's the whole experience. Are you fulfilling his needs in a way that gives him a sense of comfort and happiness that he's with you? Again, I'm not trying to lay this on you. I agree. He's doing behavior that if it bothers you and he knows it bothers you, then he needs to tell you, this is why I do it, and I don't mean to hurt you, and I'm so sorry. He has to come forward and give you his thoughts. He has to tell you what he's missing. He needs to be honest with you. But number 4 is put yourself in his shoes. Have you ever thought about it? Not that it makes it right or wrong. I'm not putting it there. But have you ever thought about having sex with someone else? Ever? And if that's the case, at least you can relate. And again, he does it all the time. He doesn't stop. That's when you have to have that conversation. What are you missing in this relationship? What do you need? What do you need more of? And if it is all about sex, ask him the next question. Okay, let's just say that I did fulfill your sexual needs. What else is missing? Find out if there's anything else. This is the kind of conversation you need to have. All right, we got 2 more. Number 5 is a little bit harsh. It's spending more time thinking about your own behavior, and we talked about that, focusing on yourself, that drives him to want to get away from you. Again, it's a little harsh. It puts a lot of responsibility on you. It sounds accusatory toward you. I don't mean for it to sound that way. But if you were to look at yourself and figure out, okay, what about what I do? What about how I show up? wants him to get away from me? What repels him from me? This might be hard because you may not see it and you may not have it. You may not even have anything to do with his behavior. But this is where we self-reflect and try to figure out, what about me would make my partner want to get away from me? A good example of this was when I was married. My wife was always upset or depressed or something. And when we finally separated and we were apart for a while, I asked that question, what would repel her from me? I didn't know in the 7 years that we were together that I was even repelling. But I asked myself that question, what would repel her from me? What do I do that she doesn't like? And the first thing that popped in my head, it was an easy answer for me. Well, I'm highly judgmental. I give her a lot of crap about the way she eats and how much she eats. At the time I was. And boy, when that popped up in my head, I realized, oh, all this time, no wonder she's so depressed. No wonder she wants to get away from me. No wonder she's losing her zest for life. So it's important to understand your own behavior to figure out if you're doing something, even subconsciously, that might be driving someone away. And again, I'm not saying that this is your fault or that you're doing anything. You might be doing everything right. But these are the things that you look at as a process of elimination. Number 6 is the most important. Work on your self-worth and self-esteem. If you expect your worth and importance to come from someone else, you rely on them being the perfect caregiver. No one is the perfect caregiver. Even people pleasers that want to do everything for you just the way you want end up driving their partners crazy a lot of the time. No one person can fulfill what's missing inside of you. People can show up in your life for a period of time and they can fill that void, yes, but it's not a permanent fix. That's why it's vital that you go on a personal journey to understand yourself and what you missed out on as a kid. It may not be everything you missed out on as a kid. You just have to look at these things inside of you and figure out if you do feel worthy, if you do feel important, if you do feel valuable in this world to others. Because if you don't, that needs to be worked on first and foremost. Make step 6 step 1 instead. I do have episodes on self-worth and self-esteem. Just go to my website, look in the search field, type in self-worth, type in self-esteem. You'll find them. And also go to my website and look up the word jealous. I've created other episodes on jealousy, and I think they're going to be very valuable for you. So Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing this. I know I didn't cover all aspects of this. I know I didn't get every question answered in your letter, but I hope this helps you understand my perspective on this and where you can go with it and how you can get into a better space with it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll be right back with my closing words after this. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Overwhelmed Brain. I want to remind you to go to quietbegins.com if you're experiencing anxiety or social anxiety or anything that you might call anxiety. The Safe Empowerment System is a very powerful method to help alleviate and overcome anxiety, and I want you to experience it. Go to quietbegins.com. I also want to mention my other podcast over at Love and Abuse. Go to loveandabuse.com. It is the official podcast of the MEAN Workbook on emotional abuse and manipulation. If you haven't heard of the MEAN Workbook, it is a 200-point assessment along with a lot of healing information and resources to help you through a difficult relationship. If you want to pinpoint exactly why your relationship is so complex or so difficult, you need the MEAN Workbook. The workbook and the podcast over at loveandabuse.com. And I want to thank the members of the Patron program. If you want to support this show, if you find value in the things that you hear on this show and you just want to say thank you, go over to patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com and become a patron member. It is how we support the show over here, and the existing patron members, I want to thank you so much. Your support is how we continue, and it's a reminder for us that you appreciate what you hear, you like what you hear, and you want to hear more. And that's what I want. I want you to benefit from this show as much as possible. I want your life to change. I want it to be better than it is, even if it's great. I want it to be better than great. I want you to have it. Thank you so much to anyone that supports the show over at patron.theoverwhelmedbrain.com. And finally, I'd like to thank Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com for some of the music transitions in The Overwhelmed Brain. I don't know if I've told this story in the past few years. I remember I told it in one of the very, very early episodes. It might have been like the first 10 or 20 episodes. It was my jealousy story. And this is embarrassing. I was about 17, 18, and my girlfriend at the time, she worked at this store, it was a department store, and she would tell me that she would talk to this guy after work, and they got along great. And while she was telling me this very, very benign story of her talking to this guy, I had these feelings come up in me. What are you talking to another guy for? Why are you talking to him? Why do you have to talk to a guy? I just didn't want her to talk to other guys. You can see how I was probably kind of controlling back then. But I tried to keep my cool. I tried to keep my composure. Try not to act like crazy and say, why are you talking to him? But I would ask, sort of passive-aggressive questions, I guess you can call them that, and ask about him and if he is seeing anyone. Does he have a girlfriend? And who is this guy? And I would just ask questions, and it was clear that I was trying to dig for information. I mean, I can remember this in hindsight now. And she answered all the questions, but she could tell I was a bit irritated. So, one night, I decided to do something, stupid. I drove up there, and it was dark, and I hid in some bushes outside this building. This department store is in the parking lot. And I watched her come out, and she did talk to this guy. And they walked around the building. They kept talking and talking. And by the end of the conversation, nothing happened. They just talked. And I felt a little bit of relief, and I also felt a little bit angry, but at the same time, nothing happened. So I guess everything's okay, but I wanted to cause trouble. No, I didn't do anything then. I just went home, and I didn't tell her I went there until the next day I asked her, so did you talk to that guy again? And she said, well, yeah, we had a conversation. I think she said he was talking about maybe his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend or whatever. I said, so what did you do? Did you just talk for a couple minutes, or did you leave right away after? And she goes, we just talked for a few minutes and then we left. And then I said, no, you didn't. And she said, what? I said, you talked to him for about 15 minutes. In fact, I saw you walk around the building with him, and you kept talking to him. You talked to him for a long time. She goes, you were there? And I said, yes, I saw the whole thing. And she said, what? Why were you there? I said, because I wanted to find out. I wanted to make sure. And I think that was the point our relationship started to go downhill. But I don't remember exactly the rest of the conversation at that point. But I do remember that the relationship was not as fun as it used to be from that point on. I became so obsessive, so possessive, so jealous, so everything that she couldn't stand to be around me. She did not want to be around. Of course she didn't want to be around me. Who wants to be around someone that stalks them, spies on them? That was me. I was a teenager. I was stupid. And I made that decision, and I told her about it, and it screwed everything up for us. And that's okay. I mean, I had to learn that. If I didn't learn that lesson then, imagine if I took that into my 20s and my 30s and my 40s, and who would I be today? That's why self-growth is so important. You gotta look inward and figure out why you do these things. Why would I do something like that? When I looked at that in myself, I think it was in my 20s, I started looking at that seriously and started addressing my jealousy and started addressing that stuff, wondering why I would behave that way. That just seems like a bad idea. That just seems unhealthy. And now the word I use, that just seems toxic. I don't want to be toxic to my partners. That's why one of those steps is look inward and find out how you are repelling to your partner. That behavior was very repelling. I didn't want to show up like that anymore. I thought it was wrong. There was something in me that realized I'm just so obsessive. I don't like me being obsessive like this. And the episodes I've done on obsession were also self-reflection as well. I just looked inward and realized, oh, wow, I used to be this way. This is really good to explore and make sure it's all out of there. Because I don't want to be repelling. I don't want you to be repelling either. You're not. You're not to me. But we have to look at these things in ourselves so that we don't become the person that someone else doesn't want us to be. And instead, we are trying to improve ourselves, trying to work on ourselves, and even being responsible for our own behavior. And yes, I'm talking about Jennifer's husband too. He needs to be responsible for his own behavior so he doesn't become repelling to his wife. Because she's had it. She's had enough. It's driving her crazy. She's pulling her hair out. She's had it. We don't want to be that person to our partner. So that's why I think it's very important just to look inward and be honest. Who am I? What am I doing? And if I really have this much trouble with someone else's behavior, maybe it's time that I'm not with this person with that behavior and do something positive for myself. I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm not saying you have to end a relationship. I'm just saying if it's to the point where you can't stand it every single day and it's between driving yourself crazy, driving them crazy because you can't stand the behavior and you're expressing it to them, and they can't stand your complaints anymore, maybe it's time to do something for yourself and take a step in the direction that you need to take, if anything, just to take a break and reflect. And while you're reflecting, keep an open mind so that you can step into your power. This will help you be firm in your decisions and actions so that you can create the life you want. Always take steps to grow and evolve. You are powerful beyond measure. And above all, and this is something I absolutely know to be true about you, you are amazing.